Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Mortgage Whining. We're a couple of mortgage guys whining about the mortgage business and things going around and hot topics. I'm joined as always with Michael Fischer, branch manager, Ross Mortgage, Brighton, Michigan. How you doing, Mike?
Doing great.
And I'm also joined with Chris Bailey, Realtor extraordinaire from Remerica United Realty in Novi. How you doing, Chris?
Good. How are you?
So before all these events, we try to come up with some good topics, but I think we all can kind of agree on what the number one topic in today's market is. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree.
I think everyone knows what we're about to talk about. It's called inventory. It's a word that people don't like to say because right now it's so low. One of the burning questions that I always get online and I get when I'm out and about is the inventory that bad? I mean, it's easy to go online and complain about it. It's easy to say it. But talk to me from a realtor point of view. How bad is this inventory?
It is low. I mean, it is lower than it normally is. I would also encourage people to be mindful of the fact that we are just going into the spring season. Mm-hmm. So we will start seeing the market fill up a little bit more, I believe. Mm-hmm. But as compared to years in the past, yes, right now the inventory is very low. It can be very difficult, especially for our first-time home buyers.
Yeah. And the price point just keeps going up and up.
The price point moves. The price point is a moving target right now. That is for sure. It moves quickly.
Chris, are you seeing some houses sell so fast they might not even make it to the inventory numbers?
Yes. So there are situations right now where homes are being sold without even going on the market. We all have many buyers to offer to our sellers. And sometimes we have that situation occur, sure, where you're having homes sell before they even make it to the market.
Yeah, or even if they don't sell before they make it to the market, they sell in an hour. I mean, my sister, God bless her, but she was fortunate enough to be moving and being able to sell her house at the same time. She sold her house in an hour and a half.
Yes.
I mean, that's insane to me. That just tells you how many people are actually online searching.
Correct.
So
right now, there are homes that if you properly prepare a home and put the home at even the high end of the fair market value, you are going to end up with multiple offers. You're going to end up with offers in your lap as a seller that have escalation clauses on them, which an escalation clause is saying I will come in X number of dollars higher than your highest offer up to a certain point. Sometimes it's uncapped. Sometimes people write an escalation clause saying simply, I'll come in $3,000 higher than your highest offer.
Oh,
now, usually I write
you got to prove to them what that highest offer is. Is this an honor system?
Yes. So, it's not an honor system. So there is a way to write that. And the way I write it is I write highest bona fide offer because the term bona fide means they have to prove it to me, right?
Sure.
So I do ask for a copy of the contract that shows that highest offer to prove that it's there.
That's crazy.
But I have had realtors on my own listings. I've said to them, my highest offer right now is this number. And they literally said, okay, well, then our offer is this. And they don't even ask for proof, which kind of scares me a little bit.
I bet. Are you getting sight unseen? Are you getting a lot of sight unseen offers? Or are people still going to see the house?
Most people still want to see the home. Mm-hmm. It's still definitely something you want to, touch, feel, experience in person. But right now, I'm 53 years old. And the first time in my life, Southeast Michigan is growing pretty exponentially right now. We have people moving here from other parts of the country, which honestly in my lifetime, we saw a lot of people leaving Southeast Michigan, but we didn't see a lot of people coming to Southeast Michigan, and now it's beginning to grow. So that's where using things like virtual tours, where you can do we call it Matterport is the most common term used for it, where people can see a home without actually walking through it themselves. And I have had people buy my listings without ever walking into them until the day they closed.
So this is a total curveball from what we're used to here in Michigan. I'm glad you brought that up about people moving into Southeast Michigan. That is something that we're not used to. And it was funny when I talked about COVID in one of our previous podcasts, I said, Michigan could be in trouble because of the fact that you can work from anywhere. My sister is closing her home in Michigan and moving to Mississippi, and she's not losing her job.
Right.
She's keeping her job and she's going to work from her job. So I thought I was really nervous about that because I was like, wow, if you don't have to deal with winter and you can keep your job, why in the world would you come here? Why wouldn't you leave? So I was actually worried a lot of people would leave. But what you say, I've read more and more, is absolutely true. A lot of people that are from here are coming home.
Yes.
Because if you work for Twitter, in San Francisco. You got to make 10 times as much what you make in Michigan to live in San Francisco. So they're taking their Twitter San Francisco salary and just coming home.
Right.
And that travels so much farther in Michigan than it does in obviously Northern California. So I actually have read a couple articles about how a lot of people are moving into Michigan. And I was, gotta admit, pleasantly shocked because I thought the opposite would happen.
So they're selling their house, like, for example, in California, and they're coming to Michigan with a lot of cash.
Yeah.
Which compounds trying to get that offer accepted.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Tim, one thing I think we haven't done yet.
Oh, man. We haven't talked about the fact that we're here whining about the industry. So cheers, guys. Cheers. Mortgage whining, where we talk and whine about the industry. Oh, man. I hate it when we miss the cheers. So cheers. That's all right. We can do things out of order. Mike, that's a really good point. People are coming with cash. People are putting absurd offers in. I've heard as much as I think the highest one I've got is $78,000 over value, and they purchase the home. So if I'm a first-time home buyer, even if I'm a second-time home buyer, and I don't have a lot of liquid cash, I got my 20% down, 10% down, whatever it may be, but I don't have anything more than that, how am I going to win these bids? Like, let's start with you. How are you helping your buyers win these bids? Because that's what the name of the game is right now.
Couple things. Number one, I'm going to try to get a hold of that listing agent as quickly as possible. And I'm going to try to use the familiarity they might have with myself or my company or other realtors I know to at least get to the point where they trust the lender that's working with the buyer. Then I'm going to make sure that the buyer understands if they want to pay a little bit more, it might be something they have to do, but I'm going to run the numbers for them. Mm-hmm. So I show the buyer, like, hey, if you decide to pay more, this is what your cash to close is. This is how it would work for you. Just, does that still make sense? Does it still kind of fit your budget? Mm-hmm. And in the case that you just kind of gave me, you said, well, what if this person is putting 10 or 20% down? I would show that buyer, look, if the house appraises 5% low and you had 10% to put down, we can still do the transaction with the exact same cash out of pocket. Mm-hmm. In our world, it might be ran as if it was 95%. Mm-hmm. So things like the mortgage insurance might change a little bit, but in some cases, it's such a small change, mm-hmm. almost imperceptible to the borrower's payment or cash to close, that when you show the borrower side by side how it would be different, oftentimes they realize, hey, this is just 20 cents a day or $1 a day or something. It's almost the same thing.
Sure. No, that's a really good point. And that's another thing that brings me to is I've heard this across the networks and social media is the housing bubble. I don't believe we're in a housing bubble. I don't believe we're in a housing bubble at all. I don't believe the housing bubble is going to burst. I don't believe in any of that. And the reason I don't believe in any of that is that if you just look at a 50-year historic inflation, we're still feeling the effects of 2008 and the Great Recession. And we're still making up for the fact that that was the first time in, who knows, years that we had that big of a drop in housing. And if you look at the historical data of house prices, we're simply right where we should be. It's just we can't comprehend these prices because we went through a 4 or 5 year period where they went so low and then they shot up, and we don't believe by the fact that they already shot up, it's hard for us to believe they need to shoot up more. But according to the just 3.3% of inflation standard rate every year, we're right where we should be as far as these houses going. Right. Now, I definitely think we had a little bit of a perfect storm in the second half of last year, being that houses pricing was going up and the rates were so low and affordability was so high. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens over the next couple months, in my opinion, that rates go up. I don't know how much they're going to go up. I would never throw that on camera anyways. But I do believe they're not going to be what they were a year ago, which was extremely low and made affordability really high. So from a listing point of view, so I'm the buyer's agent, right, and I'm submitting an offer.
Right.
How do I convince you to accept mine? Besides just being the highest one.
Familiarity does help, mm-hmm. Because again, sometimes you run across other agents that, it's easier to do a transaction with them. They're not trying to hold you hostage once they have you under contract. Mm-hmm. Because we've all had those transactions where a buyer's agent will all of a sudden throw a ridiculous thing out because of findings of home inspection. You find it to almost be ridiculous. But you're under contract. You have to make things work, so you're going to make them work. But nonetheless, they can have some, you might end up renegotiating your transaction, and at which time it might have been more beneficial for you to go with another offer. So that helps. Being in real estate for a number of years now, that does help that I have familiarity with other agents. And sometimes I know I'm going to have an easier go of it for my clients with some than with others. Other things that, we're finding right now that are working well for agents. We all have the experience of the escalation clause. Sometimes even just being a slightly more aggressive with your escalation clause can help your buyer out. We see a lot of I'll come in 500 over, 1,000 over, even maybe 1,500 over. But that seems, and we've compared notes at the office, that seems to almost be the cap you see in escalation clauses. And that's just not entry-level housing. That's even $600,000-$700,000 housing.
Right.
And you're seeing, okay, well, maybe if you made it $2,000 to $3,000, you're going to stand out that much more. Of course, the appraisal guarantees help if you're able to do that. Now, if you're an average Joe buying an average house in a starter home in maybe parts of Livonia, Michigan, or Northwestland, or something like that, Canton, Michigan, so this is where the communication between realtors is key. So your buyer, as a buyer's agent, you need to call the listing agent up and not just say to the team, how many offers you got? That's so ambiguous. It's like, what does it matter? They've got offers. They have offers. What you need to be asking is, what does the seller need to help them make this move? So find out things like, do they need occupancy? Well, how much occupancy do they need? Most mortgage payments do not come due until 60 days post-closing, correct?
Yeah, 45 to 60, yep.
So you have some time there, whereas a buyer, even if you're cash poor, you can say, hey, you need 30 days of occupancy? I'm going to give you 30 days of occupancy for free. So you can get your affairs in order, you can pack up the house, you can make your move, and you're not under a bunch of pressure. That's a gift you can give your seller as a buyer that costs you literally nothing. Other things you can do that gets a little bit more creative, besides the escalation clause, besides the appraisal guarantee, offer maybe to pay the owner's policy, which is normally a seller cost in Southeast Michigan. So that's going to be, again, depending on the price of the home, maybe $1,500, $2,000, $2,500. Again, depends on the price point we're talking about. A third thing you could consider doing is paying a portion of transfer tax. And of course, in Michigan, transfer tax is $8.60 per thousand of selling price. Step up and offer to pay some of that. By doing these things, you can definitely help, as far as gaining your offer to the head of the line.
That's interesting. We've often talked about how we call the listing agents on behalf of our buyers. We've got a program coming out that I'll detail later on in a later podcast that we're going to try to do. Anything you can do to differentiate yourself as a buyer, to strike a chord with the listing agent, I think is going to help you win. Right. for sure. What do you do about? Go ahead.
I was going to say I've come across one in the last couple of weeks that we're working with right now, and it's I call it the rich dad philosophy or strategy, if you will. And essentially, it's a borrower who is trying to get in, and they've just put so many offers in, they've tried, and they just can't seem to get their offer accepted. Going to a parent and saying like, hey, could you potentially borrow against your 401k or cash out some assets or whatever and help me put a cash offer in?
Yeah.
And the way that it works, and the reason that some of parents are comfortable with it, is you can describe either delayed financing, which is a Fannie Mae product, where you can get the cash back out of the property within 6 months, or again, reach out to Ross Mortgage for information on that, right?
Yeah, no, reach out to Ross Mortgage because there's some caveats to that, but that's an awesome program.
Or in some cases, the parent might not be comfortable having their child on the deed with them at the time of purchase. So the case that I worked on this morning, the parent is just buying the house outright with cash, and then the kids are going to buy it from the parent in a few months when it all gets settled. Yeah,
we've done that. The delayed financing is a great one too, because it gets 80% of the money back to whoever put it up. And
then, mom and dad's 401k will get
absolutely
get
paid. Gets repaid. It can happen the day after closing. There's a lot of information. Reach out to a local Ross Mortgage person to figure out more on delayed financing, because that's another good one for sure. All right, so from a loan officer point of view, what I hear the most, and this is so deflating from a loan officer, and I can understand, Ross Mortgage, we have thousands of pre-approvals right now. I think we have the most outstanding pre-approvals that we've had since I've been there. I've been there for 20 years. and you leave on a Friday and you're smiling. This is the life of a loan officer right now. On Friday, you get called from 4 or 5 buyers that say, "Hey, we put offers in," and historically, that means we're waking up Monday to 3 purchase agreements in our inbox. We're getting offered constantly. So, from a loan officer point of view, Mike, and then I'll start with Chris, and then we'll go to Mike. From a realtor's point of view, and from a loan officer's point of view, how are you gaining more business in this market?
The main thing I've been doing is I am actively marketing myself in neighborhoods that I've had sales. So I've had listings in several neighborhoods this year. Or another way I look at it is, if you are a buyer and you say to me, Chris, and I always say to my buyers, right now I need to know your top 3 neighborhoods that you want to live in. If everything was ideal and you could live wherever you want to live, give me the name of those 3 neighborhoods. And we are doing things with mailing campaigns that basically we've put together it's a well-worded letter. And when you set out anything as far as mail goes, anyone who's ever done mailing, you understand there is a certain percentage of just stuff gets thrown in the garbage immediately, and it lasts in someone's hand maybe 2 seconds. So there's ways we try to get that letter open, and one of the ways we do is my assistant hand writes addresses on all these envelopes. And talk about a tedious task that I give her, but I give it to her, and we mail these neighborhoods. Why? The envelope is nondescript. Sometimes we'll even buy envelopes that might be like yellow in color or blue in color because we want someone to open them, because they don't look like a standard piece of mail. But when they open them, there's the letter. And then what I get is a phone call, and I've been getting these calls from people, and it simply says, "Hey, I would love you to sell my home directly to a buyer." And there is some negotiation on commission when that happens, and that's fine. I'm okay with that, because when it's all said and done, my goal is to get my buyer into a home. And if I help that seller sell their home, sometimes I'm then even going to help them buy another home. So another thing that we do right now, and we've been actively doing, is we are using, some ideas as far as there are tools available to us in the real estate community that you can look at in any given neighborhood and say, okay, the demographics of this neighborhood is this. And then you can punch in there who in this neighborhood is over the age of, let's say, 55. Because generally speaking, by 55, most people start becoming empty nesters. Because we do have a high percentage of people right now who are empty nesters. And two people are living in a 2,600 square foot, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath colonial on a 1/3 of an acre lot. And the upkeep at their age is gaining to be too much for them. But they keep thinking to themselves, because they're so far ahead in their mortgage, they've been paying on it for 20 years because they raised the family in this home. And they're like, well, I'm not going to sell it because it's cheaper for me to stay here. But big picture, the home doesn't work well for them. So if you show up and get in there and present some ideas to them, in a lot of cases, you can get them to sell the home. And a lot of times, they'll sell it directly to your buyer. Because not everyone wants the madness of this market. Not everyone wants 100 different buyers walking through their home over a weekend, and then dealing with 10, 15, 20, 30 different offers on Monday. It takes time to go through all these things.
Right.
Is that kind of what your letter says? Stop the madness?
Yeah, I mean,
right?
there's a rhyme to the reason, and we make a cost benefit to the seller. I mean, there are things we do to make a cost benefit to the seller, because we don't want to short that seller on the value that they could obtain by going on the market. But in the same respect, we also want to, respect their wishes of the fact that they don't want 100 people coming through their home.
It's funny, from a loan officer, it was always, man, these realtors are tough because all they want are listings. Now, really, all they want is listings. When inventory was so high, it was easy to be like, come on, I know all you want is listings, but you need buyers. Now it's like, what are you going to do? So how are you gaining business in this market? How do you gain business from a loan officer's perspective in this market?
Well, from a loan officer's perspective, you have to kind of partner with the agents on getting these offers accepted, and you have to stand out in your ability to communicate with another agent. If you're working with an agent and you have no ideas or no plan to help that agent get that offer accepted, they don't care so much about the service level on the loan or the rates that you're providing the client or what have you, because nothing's ever going to close. So it's really important that the loan officers understand what their partners are going through and try to help them solve that problem. And so it's kind of a new value proposition for a lot of loan officers. They're used to just offloading that and saying, hey, that's kind of your job. I'll make one phone call and I'll get a nice, fancy approval letter. Yeah. But I think we got to dig deep into our toolbox and come up with this as much as we can.
That's a good point.
I think one thing I know I've seen us do at Ross, and I know I've suggested to some other loan officers and agents, is getting the borrower's permission to have the borrower perhaps share some of their financial stats or data with the party that's accepting their offer. For example, proof of funds and or possibly FICO score. If anybody's watching this, I'm not suggesting anyone would ever do that without written permission. But when the borrower goes in and can demonstrate to a high quality listing agent, like, look, I fit in the box really well for a mortgage. This is actually where I'm at. This is my financial portfolio, if you will. That listing agent can say, like, hey, there's this cash offer, but this guy right here, he really fits in the box. He's probably going to close really smoothly. He's willing to pay more than the appraised value. He's got extra cash to pay more. I mean, he's already put it in writing. You are going to net more money. You might have to wait 15 more days. Yeah, that can make you stand out.
A mortgage offer, I've always said, a mortgage offer from the right place is not always worse than a cash offer. It really isn't.
I think you work with matters.
I think another thing we're doing right now at Ross and around the industry is really partnering up with the agents. We're in this together.
Yep.
I mean, this whole, I've had agents call all the way up to me at our company and complain about, closing time and stuff like that. And I just have to say to them, I'm like, hey, we're all gunning for the same thing here. We want to close this thing. We want to close it as fast as possible. One of the major issues that the mortgage industry as a whole is facing is the appraisal industry. And I'm not talking about low appraisals. I don't care about that. I mean, you can't offer $50,000 more than the house is being listed for and expect your appraisal to come in. No. That part doesn't bother me. But someone told me the other day, it was actually an appraiser, and he said he made 3x last year. He made 3 times the money he made in 2020 than he did in 2019. So put yourself in these appraisers' shoes. They just came off their best year ever. Most of them. Best year ever. They made more money than they've ever made in their life. In Michigan, at least, this is supposed to be their downtime. Do you know how hard it is not to get an appraiser to come in at value, but to get an appraiser to do an appraisal? I mean, they have just worked. I mean, the thing about an appraiser is in order for them to make 3x, they're working 3x. So they literally just went 12 months working as hard as if 70, 80, 100 hours a week straight. No vacation because of COVID, no breaks, grind. And I'm telling you, in my 20 years, I've never seen it like this where I'm getting quoted, yes, I'll do that appraisal. Yes, it'll cost twice as much, and I'll have it to you by April 15th. I mean, it's insane. And I got these, we have agents and other people, and notably so, being like, why is this taking so long? And I have to remind them, I'm like, I have nothing to do with the appraisal, right? I call a management company, I tell them what I want, and away we go. But I just thought together, for me to gain more business in times like this, what I always did is I reminded my realtors that we're a team. And the calmer we can make the buyers and sellers, the easier our job is, and I think it's important to make sure you pair yourself with good realtors such as Chris and other realtors in the neighborhood. I mean, there is some really good realtors, but I think, Chris, you'll be the first to admit, just like loan officers, there's some not so good realtors as well. And a bad loan officer and a bad realtor can really make it a transaction go sideways.
Well, what I've actually seen is I have a transaction right now with a realtor who's actually also the loan officer.
Oh, jeez.
And that has basically convinced me never to accept an offer again on behalf. I will actually caution my sellers from this point forward on that scenario because I personally believe that's a huge conflict of interest.
There's only one company, I won't say the name, doing them, and you should not be able to do that.
No,
it should not be. But I know it happens.
Yeah,
and it's a guiding principle that the Rosses have never even attempted. I mean, we've been asked many times, and we're like, no. So you never can be both.
I would like to go back to the appraisers for a minute. So
yeah, absolutely.
So I jokingly say I sleep with the devil because my wife's a residential appraiser. So And I would tell other realtors out there really simply, because you know, it's kind of funny. If you were a fly on the wall in any real estate office, what's the most thing you hear people complaining about? And it's appraisals, right?
Right.
Didn't come into value, you know. And the reality of it, generally speaking, is it's always the home is overpriced for what it truly is.
100%.
So if you want to gain an appraiser's good faith, it's really simple. Supply them with 3 simple things: a list of valid updates. What comps did you actually use when you priced out that home to put it on the market? And if you have it, so my photographer also gives me a floor plan for all my listings.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I know an appraiser is required to do a sketch and do the floor plan themselves. But if I've got a 3,000 square foot home that's got 3 levels and the basement is completely finished and it's segmented out still, if I hand that to them, even if I email it to them or meet them in person and hand it to them, it's giving them a gift because it's making their job that much easier.
Absolutely.
And I simply say to them, look, the square footage on any room is rounded up to the closest foot, just so you know. But it's an accurate enough drawing that it hugely helps them. And they're an internal, what I call them is they are internal clients, because we have exterior clients, we have internal clients, and they are an internal client because
They're part of the team.
They're part of the team, they're part of the transaction. You can't hate on them and then expect them to give you back a gift. And I've never met an appraiser who didn't want to bring a home into value, and I know that's another thing. Oh, they didn't want to bring it into value.
I love that when I hear
Because
that.
they love battling with us
I
after
love
the
that.
fact.
I love that. That's
So
my favorite.
I always have the friendly conversation of how much time an appraiser has to put in to get to where they are to do their career
Yeah.
compared to what we have to do. And I'll be honest, as a realtor, the standards that we have to put in to get our profession is not nearly as tough as it is to get an appraiser.
I believe that.
And I always say, look, they know what they're doing. And occasionally, yes, we get bad appraisals. It does happen. We occasionally get bad work. But you know what? If you know how to write a good rebuttal letter, you can overcome anything.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, the appraisers that are good to work with are great, to be sure. I was just simply talking, and I'm glad you know one personally, very personally. The grind they went through last year had to have been insane. You know, it had to have been insane because, unlike us, right? I mean, when appreciation happens or when the average loan goes up, we get raises, but our work doesn't change. We just get raises because we get paid based on volume. They don't. You know, and I mean the amount of they get paid based on the amount of work. And I mean, if I speaking personally, I gotta believe appraisers are exhausted right now. You know, they just are. So it brings us to our last topic, which I think is the most important topic, and I think everything we spoke about kind of blends into this last topic, and that is educate, and expectations. How important is it right now to set the right expectation and educate these buyers and sellers based on what it is they're doing, the offers they're making, and the ramifications of what happens if they do happen to make an overpriced offer, an offer that they know isn't going to appraise, but they want it anyways. What does it mean when the realtor says, hey, you're going to put an appraisal guarantee on that? Mike, start with you.
Well, I think I touched on it earlier, but I think for loan officers, we sometimes look at numbers and math and say, hey, this is really easy because we do it every single day. But our average customer is buying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses in their lifetime, and they don't always see transfer taxes and title and appraisal and mortgage costs and things like that. And they don't always understand how taxes can change from house to house, or how paying more than appraised value would affect how much they need to close. So I think it's super important that a high-level loan officer who's working with purchase borrowers understands how to get that borrower specific information on a house that they're putting an offer on that weekend or that day. And also, you know, can show them, hey, if you're going to do an escalation clause, or you're going to pay over appraised value, or you're going to put a guarantee, and the house appraises at this lower number that you've said is kind of your minimum point, how does that change your cash to close exactly? So that the borrower is not scrambling trying to come up with money or thinking they got duped by the realtor or loan officer because it's more cash than they had anticipated. So I think it's very important that we up our communication skills and we sharpen our pencils so that the buyers know what they're getting into before they put an offer out there that, you know, it just doesn't quite fit their pocketbook.
Absolutely. Chris, what do you got?
So when you sit down with clients, especially on the buy side, you see, we jokingly have a term called the Pop-Tart realtor because they pop up at a moment's notice to go show houses, and that might be tempering down in today's market. But if you don't take the time to interview your clients, especially because, again, even if someone has already bought a home and now they're selling their first home or they're selling their second home, they're buying another home, this is not something most clients do, but maybe at the earliest 5 years, usually it's every 10 to 20 years that they're doing this. So you haven't done it in a long time. So you need to sit down with these clients. You need to explain to them, this is what the buyer side's costs are. This is what the sell side's costs are. This is the market we're in right now. These are the things we are doing to get your offer to have more notice. And just be realistic with them. And I also encourage realtors very much so to even sit down right in front of your clients, turn your computer on, pull up the multi-list and show what is available to the buyers, show what has sold for the sellers, because we have price points moving very quickly right now. Trotters Point, a very prominent neighborhood in South Lyons, been there for about 25 years now. It's near the high school. And I put a home on the market in Trotters Point for $375, and it was worth at the high end of value $375. We're going to sell that home. We're going to close here soon at $400. I'm getting ready to put another one, same model, on the market in Trotters Point. It has a little bit more going on, so we're going to be putting that one on the market for $415 to $420, probably closer to $420. So you're seeing price points move. That's about 6%, and then again, 4 or 5%. Very, very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So even if you write these escalation clauses, even if you write these appraisal guarantees, you might be solvent quicker than you think.
So crazy. And remember too that that's against the grain because rates are going up. And historically, when rates go up, house pricing goes down. This is the complete opposite. Another thing COVID did to us. Put us in a weird another weird situation,
You are finding people with COVID found out that the home they live in isn't big enough for their wants and needs.
Yes.
And so now they want something bigger.
Well, especially those companies that aren't going back.
Right.
I mean, I'm fortunate enough to work for a company that our intentions is to come back.
Right.
We're a minority. A lot of these companies are not coming back. And if all of a sudden you got to be home all the time, it's definitely not big enough. My home, I don't have an office. I spent the first 6 months of COVID working in my kitchen, basically.
With like 1 to 2 to 3 kids in the background.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, possibly 4 at times. So yeah, no, for sure.
I mean, one of the primary staging tips we're giving our sellers right now is to basically configure one of the bedrooms to be a home office.
Oh yeah.
To present it as a home office.
I believe
because
that.
that's what people are looking for right now.
I believe that. I believe that for sure.
Well, Tim, you just talked about the pressures of people moving to want more space or more offices. Also, there's that stat out there: household formations are at a historic all-time high in America as compared to available housing. So there was a lot of folks who kind of delayed buying. The generation that's coming up now didn't buy as early as the previous generation. So, they did have children, get married or what have you, build households, but they didn't buy as quickly. So now all of a sudden we're seeing them perhaps feel the pressure to go ahead and buy. So that's putting even more pressure.
Well, you got Gen Z, right? We're Gen Z, right? I think we're Gen Z.
so.
I think we're Gen Z. Whatever. Our generation. This is the first time. This is the first time, and basically to agree with what you're saying, this is the first time in a long time where 2 generations are at a buy point. You got our generation is either moving up, and usually our generation moving up comes after a big scoop of houses were bought by the next generation. That's first time homes. Well, since the millennial generation waited so long, which I don't know the reasoning, nor do I. I mean, I think I have my opinions, but they're just that, they're opinions. But since they waited so long, now for the first time, you have bad inventory and you have 2 generations that historically are at a point where we're going to buy.
And a generation that's delaying downsizing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And again, I remind especially my first time home buyers, because most first-time home buyers, a prime example, I grew up in Livonia, Michigan, so there's a neighborhood in Livonia, Michigan called the State Sub. The State Sub's between West Chicago, Joy Road, Farmington, and Merriman. And all the streets back there have a state name. That's why we call it the State Sub. Wonderful brick ranch homes for the most part. Late 50s, early 60s builds. They're solid homes. They're extremely well made. Guess who the number one competition for those homes are right now besides our first-time home buyers? They're baby boomers. Why? Where I live now in South Lyon, they are building homes, ranch-style homes, for our baby boomers, but they cost well over $400,000. And not everyone wants a well over $400,000, $500,000 home as their last home. So you're beginning to see people, and I find it actually like the kids I grew up with are boomeranging back to Livonia because they're like, I can go into the state sub and get a nice house in the low twos. I can buy another home in Florida or Arizona or Vegas, wherever I want that to be, and I can be in both of them for less than $500,000 instead of just buying the one home here. So you have these people who've got a strong amount of equity because they just sold a home they raised their families in. So they got huge equity. They got $200,000-300,000 cash. So that's who you're competing with. And if it's just really tough right now for those first-time home buyers because that's your competition. Because I one time had a gentleman say to me he was buying a house in one of those homes in the state sub. It was a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, 1,200 square foot ranch with a 2-car detached garage. He said, Chris, I'm going to take one of the bedrooms and I'm going to knock down the wall between this bedroom and this bedroom. I'm going to make a huge master. And then over here, I'm going to take down the wall between the bathroom and that bedroom. And I'm going to make this huge, beautiful bathroom with a walk-in closet and a laundry room because I'm going to move the laundry up from the basement up here. And I just looked at him and I almost dumbfounded and I said, it was earlier in my career. And I said, but you're turning it into a 1-bedroom home. You're killing the value. And he literally looked at me without hesitating and said, that's my kid's problem, not mine. They're going to take me out of that. They're going to take me out of that house on a gurney. Yeah. And I'm like, oh. And then the light bulb came on. I'm like, he doesn't care. He plans to spend the rest of his life in that home.
And that's why a lot of people are paying overvalue right now because they don't care. This is it for them. This is it.
So the baby boomer generation is still by far the biggest generation we've got. Mm-hmm. But they also have the most money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they are key competition right now.
They're going to leave all the problems to the kids.
Okay.
Well, Chris, I want to thank you for your time.
Thanks.
I really appreciate it. This has been a great edition of Mortgage Whining, where we drink some wine and whine about the industry. You gave us some really good insight, Mike. As always, thank you for all your input and your insight. And cheers, guys. I hope everyone has a great day.
Cheers.
Cheers.